Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting edition of the Lone Star Chronicles. I'm Brian Naples. As always, thank you guys for joining me. I've got a great show for you today. Bill O'Neill and I are going to discuss his work on Pink Higgins. Now, if you don't know who Pink Higgins is, don't worry, neither did I. Higgins is a Western Texas gunfighter who has more confirmed kills, if you will, than Billy the Kid, Doc Holliday, and many others. He's perhaps one of the most prolific Texas gunfighters. Prolific as in the total number of body count that he had. He's a very interesting figure and not very well known, perhaps because he never really appeared in a movie. He didn't drink. He doesn't have the exciting lifestyle that many of these other guys had. And so, but Bill covers that at the very beginning of the podcast. So I hope you all enjoy. As always, please like and subscribe to this channel so I can continue to bring you all some exciting content. We will be branching out here very soon. I've got a few different interviews lined up, and I'm not going to say what they are just yet until I've got everything solidified. But I think we're going to start branching out and trying to bring in a few other, we'll say, different historical aspects of the state of Texas. And so stay tuned for that. It'll be coming up soon. Enjoy the episode. Bill O'Neill, welcome back to the program. How are you, Bill?
Oh, I'm great, Brian. I'm ready to talk about a sort of a connection here. I can't wait.
This book fascinates me, by the way, because when I saw it, I was going through your collection and looking at your stuff. I said, who in the world is Pink Higgins? I never heard of this guy before. And now I've gotten a little bit into the book, and what a life this man had.
Boy, he really did.
Holy cow. This is I probably never would have ever been drawn to him.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad
if I hadn't seen your book.
Glad we exposed you to him. He was something else. He was a product of the Texas frontier. He was something.
So why Pink Higgins? What led you to
my great grandfather rode for him? He was a trail driver.
Gotcha.
And he was a rancher and trail driver and grew up cowboy. And when he started trail driving out of Lampasas County, which had a lot of springs and was a tributary to the Chisholm Trail.
Yes.
When Pink started driving herds, and he did as a young guy.
I saw that. Yes.
Well, he knew my great grandfather who lived somewhere near there, and my great grandfather rode with him on all these trail drives. He did not, to my great disappointment, he did not get involved in any of the shooting.
Well, it's probably better. Actually,
yeah, if he'd have gotten killed, I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't be here otherwise. Because he had quite the life. Now you told me though you've got something you wanted to start with.
Let me start with a quote. "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." But in Texas, he's always had plenty of help. Now, these words were written in a book, 10 Texas Feuds, by Dr. C.L. Sonachin, and Doc was the first guy ever to study. He had a Ph.D. in literature, was out at...
But he's into the feuds.
He got into the feuds. He came out to El Paso as a professor in the English department, and he got mesmerized by these feuds, and he did it. And the thing is, and we've talked about this before, there were more old-fashioned blood feuds in Texas, and we've talked about the first of them, the regulator-moderator.
Right, we did.
And that included the Horrell-Higgins feud. Vengeance, in fact, as Doc knew, was a very real element in all of them. And I got to write about this thing and listen. The Horrell-Higgins feud.
I really want to get into that, by the way.
The Horrell guys were bad, 7 bad brothers. One of them actually died during the Civil War.
I saw that, yes.
Well, everybody else got killed, including Daddy. Daddy got killed by Indians. Well, anyway, the Horrell-Higgins feud was in the 1870s, principally 1877, and it involved, get this, cattle theft, pioneer Texas ranchers, saloon shootouts, ambushes, a full-blown street battle in Lampasas Square, running fights in the countryside, lynchings, and murderous vendettas by night riders. I mean, the Horrell-Higgins feud was cow country drama.
This is rough and tumble stuff.
I mean, the Horrell brothers were hard-drinking, quick-triggered lawbreakers. They were cattle thieves, and they were bad. And they were just magnets for trouble all their lives. Pink helped whittle them down a little bit.
I saw that. Yes,
there wasn't but one of them left in the end. And he was raised on the Texas frontier.
Yeah, give me some of Pink's background
Well,
here.
he was a skilled gunman, and interestingly enough, he always preferred a Winchester to a pistol.
Right.
Long range or whatever. He was a gunfighter of the first rank. He participated in as many shootouts. I tallied it all up, and killed as many or more adversaries as did more celebrated shooters. You say you hadn't heard of him, but you have heard, of course, of Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday,
yes, indeed.
Pat Garrett, Bat Masterson, John Ringo, and Sundance Kid.
I
Pink
had...
was more active than any of those guys. Pick one. Pink did more than those guys did. Only a few gunfighters engaged in a greater number of deadly encounters than did Pink. Now, Billy the Kid did. And a word about the Kid. In the last 4 years of his life, the Kid was in 16 shootouts of one type or another. Now, you think about 16 shootouts in a 4-year period. No wonder he got killed.
Finally, it's inevitable for that many
But there was
shootouts.
Ben Thompson of Texas fame, Wild Bill Hickok, Wes Harden, who was just kill crazy. He was psycho. And killing Jim Miller, who was an assassination of Tom Horn. Well, in fact, he did a lot more than Tom Horn. So, but here's the thing. Pink was not kill crazy like the psychotic Harden. He was not a problem drinker like Holliday was.
Right.
And Thompson, who was problem drinker. And their drinking bouts led to gunfights. Well, he didn't have any drinking bouts. He wasn't a drinker. And unique among front-rank gunfighters, he was a hard-working family man. There were gunfighters who killed more guys than Pink. Right. But nobody had as many children. He had 9.
9 kids. I saw that.
He wins that championship. And he made a living as a pioneer rancher, trail driver, stock detective. He was a cowman, no question about it.
Oh, yeah.
But he was brought up on the Texas frontier, and he had to battle Comanches and rustlers and everybody else who challenged him just to stay alive.
Yeah.
And like any prudent frontiersman, he was aggressive in defending himself and his interests, to say the least. And in order to, survive on the frontier, man had to have a strong sense of danger.
Yeah.
And then a willingness to take direct action.
Well,
about it.
And that seemed to me, from what I gathered, to be his only education was actually in that frontier conflict, because there's no schools.
Yeah,
there's
no. In fact, they were run out of the county. The thing about it is, and by the way, let me comment on one more thing about the fact that he's not as well known as other legendary Westerners who weren't as active as gunmen as he was.
Right.
He was not murdered like Wild Bill Hickok, shot in the back of the head. Something dramatic there.
Yeah,
he did not have a tragic flaw like Doc Holliday, afflicted with tuberculosis and died young. He was not killed at 21 like Billy the Kid.
Billy the Kid, yes.
And he was never the subject of a charming movie like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Those guys never scratched the surface with him.
That's
and
crazy.
even though he fought in many gunfights, alas, not a one of them was at the OK Corral. So he didn't get any publicity.
That's why he got no publicity.
That's
He's
right.
shooting in all the wrong
right.
places.
I was in Lampasas for a family reunion in the late 90s with my mother, who was named after the cowboy that rode for him. His name was Jess Standard. Her name was Jessie Standard. And I have a granddaughter named after her, Jessie Lucille Standard.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I was there, and I was at my motel room. We were about to go to an event. There's a knock on the door, and it's these 3. One of them was a Dr. John Higgins. He was the descendant of Pink, as were Betty Miller Giddens and Bob Terry of Roby. And those guys those 3 had just loved their family connection, and they had accumulated legal documents and a jillion.
So they had already put the whole history together, or at least the documents.
Yes, indeed. And they said, listen, none of us can write, a book. And they said, we propose to hand you all of these documents if you'll write a biography of Pink. Well, they didn't have to tell me twice. Thank you. And they gave me permission to take them back to my home.
Oh, wow.
And
that's
I kept that stuff for months and got the thing. Here's the deal. John Calhoun Pinckney Higgins. How's that for a name?
It's quite a name.
Historic name.
Named after John C. Calhoun, no doubt. Yeah.
You bet. And the Pinckney also. He was born in 51 in Georgia. And then when he was 3 in 54, remember now, all this prior to Civil War, the family moved to Texas in a large wagon train. and they settled near Austin because I'm telling you, Texas in the mid 1850s was hairy. Indians came everywhere. They rode into Austin and kidnapped people and stuff. And Lampasas, where they would move, was hit by raiders for years and years. And so anyway, but it had just been organized when they moved out there so they could get land real easily. And they got land. And there's if you know the hill country, we call it a mountain out there.
Yeah,
it's not a mountain. It ain't Montana.
No,
you know?
no, it is not. It is not.
I've had Montana guys look at the pictures in the book and say, that's not a mountain.
What do you call that?
Yeah, I thought it was a mountain.
It's a hill. It's a hill.
It's Higgins, and it's Higgins Mountain.
Right.
That their ranch was in the shadow of that. And there's another quote mountain right next to it, and that is Higgins Gap. And I got to go there, and the guy that owns the property let me take those photos and stuff.
I saw those. Yeah, I was looking at some of those.
Yeah, that's cool. Anyway, Comanche raids were so common at that point, and there was no military presence.
Yeah.
That they retreated to Bell County, Belton, but they returned to their home at Higgins Mountain in '62, and the Comanche raids would continue in the area until '74.
Golly.
And Pink's daddy rode with pursuit posses, no military presence. That's all they had.
That's all they had, yeah.
And Pink stayed at home to protect the family with his rifle gun, Golly. But he was tall for his age. He would wind up being 6'1", tall at that period, several generations ago. And soon he was the one riding in pursuit while his father guarded the home. And on two of these different expeditions against rustlers or Indians or whoever it was, he got shot. He was wounded once in the foot and once in the leg. I got to tell you an anecdote.
Okay, I'm listening.
They like to use Tonka with scouts. Indian scouts were really good.
Yeah.
And that Tonks hated Comanches who'd run them out of their homes. And they were cannibalistic also, not for appetite, but they believed that if you ate the hand or the arm or something, barbecued, of course,
right,
of your enemy, then you got his best qualities, his bravery,
right,
etc.
Right.
So anyway, they were in camp one night with the scout, and they were doing their meat on a stick over the fire, And Pink said to this Tonk, "Quit letting that greasy beef drip on my buffalo meat." And the Tonk said, "Him no beef. Him Comanche."
Oh, my gosh.
At 18, Pink was with 18 now, high school senior today. At 18, Pink was with a posse that chased down a rustler, and Pink was the one who had adjusted the noose.
Noose, yeah.
And the thief said, "Boys, I know I'm going to hell, and I want to arrive in time to find a partner for the first dance." And he spurred his horse himself. Wow. Thus, nobody had to hang him.
Right.
And he killed himself. Wow. As a teenager working for his father, Pink began acquiring his own cattle. That's the only way his dad could pay him. It was a barter society. And at 17 in 1868, he helped drive a herd along the Goodnight Loving Trail. And thereafter, Pink was a frequent participant in trail drives. That Good Loving Trail went out to New Mexico, so anyway, from that point on, he was hooked. And interestingly enough, a few years later in 71, he was part of a group that purchased 900 yearling steers at 50 cents each. And then the next year, they purchased 1,700 yearlings at $1 each. So they'd gotten 2,200 cows at a real cheap price, and they drove them and sold them. And believe it or not, that early in his career, he was in his early 20s by then, right. and that was the best bonanza he ever did. But that's what cattlemen would do. They'd drive, and the market would be off, and finally they'd hit it right and make a fortune if they were lucky.
It's crazy to think of a sale price of cattle.
Yeah, 50 cents each.
50 cents a head. Oh, my gosh.
Pink led a drive to Kansas City after that, and boy, from that time on, he was a trail driver, and that's where my great-grandfather rode for him. And Pink, he was busy as a trail boss, as a cattle buyer, as a family man, because he married a young widow in 1875. She brought a daughter to the marriage, and then they had 3 kids, 2 sons and a daughter. And so the brothers-in-law often worked for Pink. And the Horrells, oh, man, they came to Lampasas County about the same time.
I was
Seven
curious.
boys. Sorry. I'm very sorry. They were all bad. They drank and fought and stole cows.
Very unkempt, uncouth group
bad guys. And the mama said, well, I raised my boys to be fighters, and they sure did, and they all got killed except one of them.
Golly.
One son died, as I mentioned, in the Civil War. Everything got so bad, there was a lot of pressure on them, and they drove cows, half of them stolen, I'm sure, or more. They drove cows. They were going to California. They didn't get any further than New Mexico. And Daddy got killed in a fight with Indians, and I think one of the brothers got killed that way. And they stayed out there, and anywhere there was going to be trouble. So they had, now this is Lincoln County, New Mexico. This is where the Billy the Kid thing would happen a few years later. But the first thing that happened out there was, quote, quote, the Horrell War.
The Horrell War.
And they got into a fight, and their youngest brother got killed in the Horrell War and everything.
Golly.
So they come back. And they got back. They had saloon fights and all this stuff. And there were killings. And there was so much of that in March of 1873, a large squad of state police, which were Reconstruction tools, they came down from Austin to Lampasas from Austin. And Captain Williams took 3 of his men while the other guys looked around town, and they went to this saloon that was frequented by the Horrells. And they got in there, and gunfire erupted almost immediately. And Captain Williams shot Mart Horrell. Mart was badly wounded but survived. Well, all 4 of the state policemen were gunned down. 3 of them died right there on the spot, including the captain. And one guy survived a while and then later died of his wounds.
Wow.
Now, Brian, that is the only gunfight in the history of the West. There have been other gunfights in which 3 lawmen were killed.
Right.
That fight in Lampasas was the only gunfight in which 4 lawmen were fatally wounded. And, that was in this saloon on the square there. And they took him to Mama's house, but the more state policemen picked him up, took him to jail in Georgetown, and man, I'll tell you, they busted him out of the Georgetown jail. They were bad, and saloon fights. So the thing is, there was Comanche violence till '74.
Right.
There were all these saloon shootings. There was all this feud. So Lampasas was a natural for a feud. And here's what happened. In May of '76, Merritt Horrell, he stole a yearling from Pink's range and sold it to his brother-in-law, who had a meat market in Lampasas. They were ranching at that point 10 miles east of town at Mesquite Creek. Pink rode into town, saw his yearling tied to a live oak tree on the courthouse square. That was
This is not going to go well.
No, that's right. He did not like. He was a guy that had been fighting people since he was a teenager, and so all he did was retrieve his yearling, swore out a warrant in court. The yearling was proved to be Pink's, and then they let the guy go. It was, you just couldn't get a conviction against a cow thief, not guilty, and so Pink warned Merritt. He said, I'm never going to bother with the law again. I'll settle the matter myself with a Winchester rifle, his preferred weapon, you know. Mm-hmm. Okay, Merritt was stupid, and he arrogantly stole several of Pink's cattle.
This is after.
Yeah, this is in January of '77, and he drove them into Lampasas to pay a debt to a cattle dealer named Alex Northington. I had the pleasure of dating his granddaughter. Out there one time. And Mr. Norrington became a banker and all that stuff. But he knew Pink. And Pink rode into town. He told, Mr. Norrington told Pink about it. He saw the cattle and he said, okay, got his Winchester.
Pink knows what to do from here.
And you bet. He walks into that same saloon where all those guys had been killed. It was still a haunt of the Horrell brothers. And Merritt, it was January, it's cold. So Merritt was standing behind a pot-bellied stove in the rear. And Pink says, Mr. Horrell, this is to settle some cattle business. Kablam! He shoots
he
him
settled
and
it.
knocks him flat on his back. So Horrell got up very unsteady, and he leaned on the shoulder of a guy who's probably sitting there. They lean on somebody else's shoulder, because Pink levered that Winchester, kablam, shot him again, knocked him on his back again, and then to make sure, he walked over to him, levering that Winchester, and shot him 2 more times, shot him 4 times.
Well.
And so that started the feud. And Pink's blood was up, and man, they got after it. There was one instance where the Horrell brothers, there was a Sheriff Alberta Sweet. I mentioned his name for a reason. Pink's going to marry his daughter one of these days.
Okay.
Well, anyway, Company C of the Frontier Battalion of Texas Rangers stationed in San Saba, 16 of their guys came over. And they started arresting, they arrested 2 of the Horrell brothers, and it's 36 miles.
Okay.
And then they arrested 4 Higgins partisans for complicity in Merritt's murder. Only thing is, everybody started getting released for lack of evidence,
Right.
and Pink never did get arrested. He stayed in the countryside, so okay. So Tom and Mart were scheduled for appearance before the district judge in Lampasas. They come there out and in from their ranch 10 miles out of town. Well, at the halfway point, there's what they call now Battle Branch. That, the town's proud of it. There's a sign right there on the highway. This is Battle Branch. And these 2 brothers are crossing the little stream, and Pink and some of his guys are waiting for them, and they opened fire. And they shot. They actually slightly wounded both of them, but one of them was wounded pretty bad. And Mart, golly, Tom got knocked out of the saddle with a bullet in his hip, but Mart nicked in the neck. His horse bolted. He jumped off, got his Winchester, and he charged those guys who were concealed, firing that Winchester. And if it's been a military action, he'd have gotten a medal for this. And he ran those guys off, man. And he took Tom to a nearby house and all that. And then both sides clashed a few days later at a place called School Creek. And there was a flurry shot. The Horrell riders retreated. And the Higgins faction, they came away from there with a saddle and a field glass and other plunder. And
that's something we don't think about too much too when it comes to this. You think of plunder and you think of conquest, like all of these things, but this is
saddle and some field glasses. That's pretty good. That's all right.
That's plunder.
And so the governor, by the way, was our biggest guy, Richard Hubbard. He was the one that weighed 400 pounds.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
And
I remember that.
Anyway, he offered a reward. We got to stop this some way. Call in the Rangers again. And so 3 days after that fight at Battle Branch, Tom, Sam, Mart, and one other partisan of the Horrells, and then Pink and 3 of his partisans rode into town. And Pink and them rode into town, and they were at the public square. It wasn't a courthouse square yet because they hadn't built the courthouse.
Right, no courthouse.
That courthouse there now is 1883. It is charming, and I'm going back out there, by the way.
Oh, cool.
Pretty soon and do a thing on my new book about, they were great about inviting me out. And so I've been in the courthouse to speak several times. Well, a fight started on the square. And more partisans came in. Pink rode back to get some of his guys, and they fought it out on the square for a couple of hours. And one guy from each side got killed, and that was the Battle of the Square. And so anyway, Major John B. Jones, now commander of the Texas Ranger Frontier Battalion, he came in, and he was an educated man. He was a master of the peacemaker's language. Some of it came straight from duels. And he got each of the sides to agree to a thing. And
and he came in at the bequest of the governor, right?
That's
You said.
right. That's
This
right.
is the second feud that the governor, remember the other one was Sam Houston in the regulator
Right.
moderator
Yeah,
role.
yeah.
The governor has to get
Yeah.
involved to stop the
Could
feuding.
we please stop this stuff? And he sided at a guy killed in this point. And It was crazy. And Major Jones, with the consent of these of these antagonists, he arrested Pink, and he arrested Horrells, and he arrested some other guys. And what he did, he got them to come in under cover of the Rangers, protection of the Rangers, and they signed these documents.
Wow.
And I printed out these documents in the book. You know, it's just too good. And the Lampasas newspaper, huge headlines like World War III. You know, it's peace restored in Lampasas. The Higgins and Horrell brothers have laid down their arms. But don't forget, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And I will say this, Pink, who was now 26, he would not have any more gunfights with the Horrell brothers, but boy, these events had earned him quite a reputation.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And
at the age of 26.
Yeah. And life would never return to normal for old Pink. And it remained all too normal for the Horrells, by the way. They kept doing stuff. They got arrested for a robbery and murder in the town to the north named Meridian. Mm-hmm. And they arrested two of the brothers and threw them in jail in Meridian, which is a little old bitty place. And sure enough, the judge in Meridian said they had Mart and Tom in custody. And so the judge in Lampasas County said, we already got charges against these guys. Give them to us. And the judge in Meridian said, no, his feelings are so strong here. I can't take them out of jail. Well, he should have kept them in jail. Well, anyway, they weren't safe in jail either.
Oh, man.
So
I saw this. I read this part.
Yeah, somebody lied to the sheriff and said his mother was dying in a town. So the sheriff
leaves the jail, leaves the town.
and about 100 men, masked men, showed up at the jail. Small jail, only about 50 of them could get in there. And they forced another inmate to hold the light while they thrust their gun barrels through the bars and opened fire. They lynched them by gunfire. And Tom cowered and tried to elude the bullets, but he got hit 9 times and deceased on the spot. And Mart, the one who had charged the thing, all right, he's rattling the cage and cussing the vigilantes, and they put 23 bullets in him, and he died. And they died.
Yeah, you're not going to make it.
Now, they are buried in a place at the Lampasas Cemetery called, it just says Horrell Brothers on there. I got a picture of it.
I saw that. Yeah, you got a picture in there.
They are buried within sight of my grandparents' grave. and so now then, 6 of the brothers are dead.
Golly.
And Sam Horrell, who was under an indictment himself, he just jumped bail and moved to California, and he lived a long life. He didn't want to make it unanimous, and he got the heck out of there. So the vendetta continued against the Horrell faction by night riders, and there were several incidents. They hanged one guy from a tree. They shot one guy down in his front yard, and there were 2 brothers. One of them got killed, the other one escaped into the darkness. And so consequently, all that happened. Did Pink involved with it? I don't know if he did.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyway, Pink, busy as a trail driver, et cetera, finds out that his wife and the mother of 3 of his kids and his stepdaughter, he finds out she'd been having an affair while he's gone with a clerk in a store. All I can say is that clerk was so stupid, you know. He was nuts. But Pink, I guess he didn't want any more. He let the guy off the hook. The guy moved to another town.
He let the guy go. Wow.
But he put the wife out of the house. She left in a carriage with a horse and her daughter from her first marriage. She was a widow. And the 3 kids stayed right there. They were kind of raised by Pink's parents. And they didn't see their mama again. That
was it.
And Pink didn't kill anybody over this one, but he did. Now, he got in some trouble a little bit later. There were always reminders that he had been an Indian fighter and a feudist and a man killer. And so actually they put him, he was an intimidating reminder of the old days, wild old days, while Lampasas became and you would understand this being from New York State, the Saratoga of the South.
Of the South, that's right.
They capitalized on their the wonderful springs that are there.
Oh man, yes.
And a huge hotel was built, and somebody railroaded Pink, and they accused him of theft, and it's called a wild stag accusation. A brand had grown over, and they found him at Pink's meat market in town, and they accused him of cattle theft. Pink didn't do that.
Oh, man.
But they sentenced him to 2 years in prison for cattle theft. And he came to East Texas. We had just opened the second prison. The first one was at Huntsville, 1849.
Right.
And then in 83, they opened a new one with a 3-story cell block and a 20-foot tall wall and outbuilding. Opened it at Rusk.
Yeah.
And they sentenced him to that. He went over there. Pink's father brought his 2 oldest sons, Tom and Cullen, and he brought them to East Texas so they would be around their daddy some. And one was attended Kilgore Business College, and Tom enrolled at Tyler Commercials College, and they both later read law, the custom of the day, since there weren't many law schools. And Pink later sent his daughters off to Catholic school in Stanford. He got out and he remarried. He married he was 32 when he got out, and he had remarried when he married a second time, he married the 15-year-old daughter of that sheriff's suite. And she was
she was 15
she
and he
was
was
15,
32.
but her mother
Wow.
had married her daddy when she was 13. So, that wasn't all that unusual. And so consequently, they had 6 children, and she was a wonderful stepmother to the 3 that she inherited. They loved her to death. She was a true sweetheart. And so Pink goes back to work, and he got offered a job as on the Spur Ranch, which has 2 enormous divisions that are connected, and he got land. They gave him a little piece of land right there, and he called it his Catfish Ranch for some reason. And that ranch had 54,000 head of cows. And by the way, it was owned by Easterners. And they would come out and visit now and then. And a Mrs. McNabb, wife of one of the owners, she was out there one time, and they would always assign one of the cowboys to the Eastern visitors just so they wouldn't get run over or something. And she looked to her. She attended a roundup, and bull calves were being branded and earmarked and castrated. And Mrs. McNabb said, "Oh, it's terrible to treat those little cowlets like that, those little cowlets." And the cowboy said, "Ma'am, them's not cowlets. Them's," he struggled for a word, "them's bullets." And Pink was a tough stock detective, really tough.
Oh, I'll bet.
And many thieves moved out. They said there were some goat thieves, and they said, Pink Higgins will bring his own goats and get us accused. There was one time when he caught a rustler skinning a stolen cow, and he tied the green hide around him, and it shrunk, and the guy had to wear that bloody, stinking hide for days.
Oh,
and
my
when he was
gosh.
turned over to the sheriff, he gasped that he wished that Pink had killed me. I wish he'd have killed me. And Pink said to the sheriff said to Pink, "Well, why didn't you?" And Pink said, "He's a walking advertisement." All right, let's close with this story. Pink got caught. The ranch had hired Pink as a stock detective, but they hired another guy as well. Mm-hmm. He was named Bill Standifer. He was from Lampasas County way back. Somehow he and Pink must have gotten crossways. Mm-hmm. This guy served 3 terms as sheriff of Crosby County, so he was an experienced lawman. But they're both working for the same outfit. They don't get along. There was bound to be trouble. And they finally decided to have a duel.
Golly.
And they dueled on the site of the Catfish Ranch or near it.
Right.
And as the guy rode up, and he had a companion with him riding a horse, Pink goes riding his favorite mount, Sandy, out. And Pink's wife sent a daughter, scuttling up on the roof to see if she could see what happened. And Pink rides horseback out there, and they see each other. They get within range, and Pink wanted the first shot. But what happened is this Bill Standifer, Pink couldn't clear the rifle out of his scabbard. So Standifer shot Sandy, the horse bolted, and Pink's shot went wild. So Standifer kind of panicked, and he started jumping around. Now he's out of his saddle too.
Yeah.
And he's jumping around, and Pink is on a knee with his rifle aimed. And remember, he's an old hand with a rifle. And when this guy finally stopped to take aim, bam, Pink shot him. He saw the dust pop out of his arm. But what had happened is the bullet went through his arm and into his chest.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And he died on the spot. He just collapsed face down, and he was buried on the spot except just outside. I had the pleasure of the nearest town is Spur. Mm-hmm. And I had the nearest town was Claremont. It was the county seat, but it's a ghost town today. Yeah. A pure ghost. It's fun to go through.
Oh, neat.
It's a great place. But anyway, Spur, the town of Spur was named after this ranch, the Spur Ranch. And they are very conscious of their history, and they had me come out. I've just shown you a poster, and I got to go out there a few months ago, and we had a wonderful gathering. I got to tell the story and sign books at the old movie theater downtown. And then we had a field trip out to the grave of Standifer and to Pink's grave and his wife's grave in Spur. And it was a fun trip. Now, the last decade of his life was peaceful. He was highly regarded. His son, Cullen, became a lawyer, best lawyer anywhere around in West Texas. Tom became a land passes teacher and county judge. His daughters married well. He had a son who, sadly, a little boy who was epileptic, and he died young, but he had grandkids. Pink was converted by a Baptist revivalist in Claremont. He went straight to his ranch and brought his whatever kids were there.
Brought them all
back to town. 4 remaining children there, and they were all baptized. On December 18th, 1913, when he was 62, he arose to start a fire, had a massive heart attack, and died. Now, he had survived 62 years despite Comanche warriors, personal enemies, a bloody range war, and the dangers and hardships of frontier life. He was buried there in town, and his wife, who was a good deal younger, was buried there later beside him.
Right.
And there was an obituary in the Texas Spur. We knew Uncle Pink personally and intimately. He had grandchildren by then, by the way. We loved and appreciated him as a real man. He was a man true to his friends, true to his ideals, and at all times, he was a man among men. That's pretty good say so. And he didn't kill anybody the last 10
years of his life. That was doggone decent of him, wasn't
Pink Higgins.
Well, and I mean, such a fascinating history. Why do you think people, last question before we go, why do you think people haven't heard of this guy?
Oh, I don't know. I said what I did a moment ago. The other guys were more dramatic. There was that, nobody had heard of Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid till that movie came out. Yeah. Nobody knew who those guys were.
Maybe it's just that he hadn't.
Billy the Kid, gets
after.
his white life snuffed out at 21. Yeah. And those other guys, they had dramatic. Nobody's heard of Pink. Yeah. But Pink was, they heard of him wherever he lived.
He's a character.
He was.
Oh, my goodness.
Tough guy.
Well, Bill, thanks for joining us. And next week, I really want to start on your baseball series.
Oh, that's great. We can do that.
You wrote a whole, you got several books on baseball.
Yeah.
And, I grew up right near, not right at the same, one town over from the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And so.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's how close you are.
That's how close I was.
Cooperstown.
I was born in Cooperstown, and then I grew up a town over.
Is that right?
So, yeah.
Well,
so we got to do the baseball series.
Oh, I can't wait. I love Cooperstown. I was a baseball nut.
Oh, it's great stuff. Well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Always.